close that. Okay. I don't think I'll go too much into what RIBA is. Most people here today know, but yeah, global professional member body, basically an institution promoting quality architecture, and in the Gulf, quite an active chapter. There's got 1,000 members in the Gulf, everything from student members to fellows who've been 30, 40 years in practice. RIBA started nearly 200 years ago now, but obviously evolved over the years, ever changing. And I mean, the main activities of RIBA, supporting architects with some tools like contracts, templates, guidance, and publishing, education, validating and accrediting universities. There's 2 RIBA accredited Part 1 courses in the UAE now, Heriot Watt and Abu Dhabi University. And also kind of the thing interesting, I think, with RIBA and similar institutions is coming together rather than just as your practice or yourself, coming together as a collection of professionals to try and lobby things like governments and other institutions for positive change or sustainability or quality of buildings in countries. And this principle of together our voice is stronger. It's on the RIBA website somewhere. And we do have an office in the Gulf, in Sharjah. There's an email here if you're interested in becoming a member. There are many types, everything from students to sort of affiliate to full-on chartered members, if you can convert some of your qualifications, or even just being through the typical RIBA 1 to 3 routes. So you can contact any RIBA-related questions, get in touch with Mafuna in the office. And so the chapter is basically members in the region that come together and arrange things. Without COVID, we'd be a bit more social and meeting physically. But we've managed to be online to actually get a lot broader reach. It's been very interesting. So we had a live student workshop with some strangers coming together, working on a site in some mangroves, make a visitor center over one day in June. And that had some very interesting results. So it's a sustainability series about regionally appropriate sustainability strategies. Koichi Takada giving a lecture on his project in Doha. We had a big festival and exhibition last year. And we're hoping to have a children's workshop this year. So this is a picture from the sustainability series we did, Arik, Koichi Takada's lecture. We had Christos from Zaha talking about the Melia Hotel in Dubai. It's now open. We had Patrick Schumacher giving a lecture in our festival as well, a panel talk. This is the exhibition we arranged. And this is the children's workshop. So we're hoping to do this again in Design Week in Dubai in November this year. We're certainly doing it somewhere in Dubai. May that be open to everybody. And some other things upcoming. A visit to the House of Wisdom in Sharjah. Now we can do in-person events again. So 3D printing and innovation series theme. A webinar in Saudi and the mega projects there, and the Bahrain Pearling Path. And ongoing at the moment with RIBA International is a photography competition on sustainability that's open, I think, I'm not sure if members or everybody. And there's a talk from Rasim Badran, open to everybody, free as well. I think that's actually tomorrow, but you can find that through the RIBA website. Okay, that goes through my intro ramble. And I think we can, we're 5 minutes in, we can start. So we've got 80 people here. We had about 150 signing up, so that's sort of normal. There might be a few coming along, and we have received a few CVs to review live. So I'm hosting with some support from Yasmin from our chapter, and our special guest today is Stephen Drew, who, this is the intro part, and explain why he's here. He is now a RIBA Council member and has been working as an architect. But you set up the Architecture Social, and you've worked before to a recruitment consultancy, which means that you've seen lots of CVs come in and to review and get feedback. And you've also talked to lots of employers. Unlike someone working a practice that only knows one practice, you know what several employers are looking for when they're hiring. And while this is our audience today is sort of global, probably majority from Middle East, and everything from students to people of sort of decades of experience still interested to know if they're moving on. It's not specific to any type. We're obviously Middle East based. We have the Middle East examples, but the principles apply everywhere, whether it's UK or here. And it is, I'm hoping people get something out of this about the main principles of how you find work and how you get into work, and what are these key tools of the CV, folio, cover letter. We're not going to cover interview today, but how these kind of operate, because I think it's a bit of a mystery for a lot of people. So Stephen, you've been doing reviews for the Architecture Social, which is another sort of institution community online, which is worth looking at for everybody. So you've been discussing this before, and this is a chance to do it with us in the Gulf and provide your expertise.
Amazing.
Myself, I've done lots and lots of CV reviews and interviews. I used to work at Hopkins in London, and then RMGM in Dubai, and now I'm a partner in my own practice here in Dubai. So we're always receiving CVs, reviewing, and I've seen the way it works, certainly in several big companies, and I think we'll discuss later. There are different, each company has a slightly different approach, but there are some things always in common. Jenny Binchy is joining us later. So she's a RIBA chartered architect from the UK, but she's been working in Dubai about 10, 11 years, I think, and had her own practice 5 or 6 years, Binchy & Binchy, very well-known award-winning practice. And so she's obviously involved in recruiting, hiring, reviewing CVs that come in. So again, it's hearing firsthand from somebody that hires and goes through the process of looking at a load of CVs and deciding which to take further. Yasmin is a member of the Gulf Chapter, representing Jordan, but actually helping with all our events, and is here to kind of help the event run smoothly and keep an eye on questions and chats at the end. Stephen, would you like to say a bit more about yourself before we go into this kind of agenda?
Sure.
Together. Mm-hmm.
Sure. Thanks, Andy. It's really good to be here, and you're right. I think that a while when I studied architecture before. I've got a job in industry, so I've been in everyone's position here looking for a job, and I think that's really important. And you're right, I have worked in recruitment for a lot of years as well. So I've been the in-between person, seeing what happens behind the scenes. And recently I do work part-time as well as run the Architecture Social with an architectural practice as the hiring manager. So I've seen what it's like to look for a job. I've seen what recruiters in particular want out of their candidates. And I see now the CVs and portfolios which really stick out, the ones that do well. And I can tell we can expand on here about what it takes to get noticed. And let's discuss as well the examples and the things I've seen of successful people. And what I mean by that is, let's talk about those who got the job and what they did to get the job. So I think that's a bit of an overview, Andy. I'm happy. You tell me when you want me to begin with stuff, but I will let you orchestrate and organize it.
Well, I think that leads in. I'm going to hide the agenda because it's better to look at our faces, I think. And
yeah,
sure. So this first part is how to find work. And I think before going into like the obvious ways like agencies and things, I'd be interested to hear what you said about, what are the ones that really stood out and why?
Yeah, sure. So I think before we even get into the tips and tricks, we have to remember, we have to boil it down about what is a job. Okay. So when an architectural practice is looking for someone, it's because they have a business need. Okay, so they're running an architecture practice, and whether it's me and you, Andy, let's pretend now we have our own architecture practice. If we're going to look for someone to join us, it's because there's a requirement in the company. We need someone, whether it's a BIM manager or a student to help out with things, or if it's an associate director. So the role of when you're applying for a job, you always got to bring it back to that. And it's very, very simple. You should always think about, how can I appeal to the job, to the person who's running the architecture practice, to the person that's running the job, and how can I satisfy their requirements? How can I reach out to them and convince them that I am the right person to fill this job? And I think if you constantly have that approach when you're designing your CV and portfolio, or you're looking for jobs, or you're communicating, if you're constantly bringing it back to that, you're going to reassure that employer, you're going to reassure that architecture practice, and you're going to talk in their language. It's about solving problems. So think of that as theory when you're designing this. And the CV and the portfolio and the interview and everything you talk about is ways in which you communicate with this person about solving their problem. You can have a fantastic personality, and that is important, but it's about solving the problem that they have on hand. If you're an architect and you've got experience in residential projects, or you've got experience in commercial offices, and this company builds commercial offices, then you need to convince them that you are the right person to continue doing that, and you have that skill set and experience. And if you're a student, you want to convey your enthusiasm, you want to convey the software skills that you've got, and that you can be, you can get involved with the architecture practice and use those skills. So that's kind of the theory behind it. And we have to think about what a CV and portfolio is. It's a means of communicating this. It's a way of showing your skills. It's a way of showing the experience you've got. And as well as that, showing a little bit of your design and personality. So that's kind of the theory behind job seeking. And we have to constantly think about that the CV and portfolio is a way of communicating to the employer that you're going to solve their business needs, because they're going to hire the person based on solving the problem. And as well as that, a little bit about it's solving the problem, and also there's the emotional value. And what do I mean by that? Okay, you've got to have the facts there. People have to go, oh, we're going to hire Ben or whoever the candidate is, because they're going to solve the problem. And it's also got to be backed up by emotion. They've got to like you as well. You've got to win them over. And you can do that in the CV and portfolio as well. So that's what we're doing here. But also, you touched upon it, we're going to talk two parts on it. We're going to talk about what's going to be in that CV and portfolio to communicate to the employer that they must invite you for an interview. But as well as that, it's the big question of how or where do you find these opportunities? And I think one big thing, one really important thing that if there's one thing I want everyone to take away from this today is that, did you know that only 20% of jobs and opportunities are advertised? 80% of the jobs out there, okay, they're out there, but they're not advertised. So how do you get them? Part of it's networking, part of it's meeting people like you, but it's also about going out there and making your own opportunities and beating people to the opportunity. So what do I mean by that? Okay, let's think about it. How many people have seen of design jobs? Okay, that's a big popular job board, and there's a few out there as well. But when they get posted, are they going to get a lot of applications? Because that's a very easy way to find jobs. And the more tricky it is to find a job or make that opportunity, the less competition there usually is. So what do I mean by that? If a job isn't advertised and you send your CV and portfolio to the company because you like their work, you potentially are getting ahead of the curve. Maybe they release a job next week. Maybe they need someone next week. But if they have your CV and portfolio there, then you're going to beat everyone else, because why would they advertise a job if they have your CV in the inbox ready to go? So there's a few things that we can talk about today. So job seeking is a process. It's difficult. No one likes looking for jobs, but we're going to bring it back to the theme of this today. It's about getting noticed. And how do you get noticed? You get noticed when you are telling that person who is hiring that you can solve the problem. Okay. And that is what it's all about. And if you are the person that reaches out and communicates to them, cuts through the noise, then statistically, I reckon that you are probably going to be the first one to be interviewed and in a great position to get that job. So maybe that's a little bit of an overview of my theory, Andy. I'd love to know your thoughts on that as well.
I think what's very interesting what you said, architects are known at not being very good at selling themselves, whether it's working or going for jobs. And what you're saying is kind of what you learn when I've had to look at sales things for our company, is that the main thing is it's not about a list of what I've done. It's putting yourself on the other side. What do they need? How do I make their life easier? How do I improve their business? And
Absolutely.
so, and that's why there is, I think, also tailoring your CV and folio to the job as much as you can is obviously well received, because probably many people put together the CV as more like a record or encyclopedia of everything they've done. But that's not selling yourself. Selling is different. Selling is really is standing out from the rest, but also making the other person want to hire you, fulfilling what they need. So it's just a different mindset. It's
yes.
but
I think
that puts then a lot of other things in perspective when you think that way, and especially editing your CV and things.
I agree, Andy. I think there was a book I've read years ago. I recommend it, but the name of it's Life's a Pitch. Okay. And exactly what you said, Andy. Sometimes you can think that a CV and portfolio is, oh, I need to do it, but it is an opportunity to convince. It's a pitch, you know, and as one or two of the big architecture practices I've worked with in the UK said, I know one of the managing directors, and he's like, this document is the most important document. So if there's one document that you need to get right, it is the CV and portfolio. But it's also, Andy, like you said, it's about curating it. It's about weighing things up. It's about communicating what's needed. You know, when you design a building, you don't throw everything into it. It's going to look all clunky. It's like there's the balance, and it's exactly like the principles of a building. Hey, it's been a long time since I've designed the building, but you got to have the foundation then. You got to make sure everything works. And what I would say is that the foundation of getting noticed really is a CV and portfolio. And before you get any clever ideas about online websites and stuff, get the basics right, and then add the innovative twists. If you want to have your awesome website and you've got 3D game engines, that's cool. But not everyone is going to look at that. And we need to make sure that the basic CV and portfolio works. And the way I would think about it is, think about it like adding a twist onto a formula that works. We know the brief. The brief is that most architecture practices look for CVs and portfolios. So that's the requirements. And you can tweak with that like you're an architect, but do not make the mistake I see a lot of people doing of going, well, I have a website, I don't need the CV and portfolio. Or even now, TikTok's getting more and more powerful. And yes, you can get noticed on TikTok, but don't send people the TikTok and then expect that, you know, they'd be like, what, where's the CV? Okay. And also the other thing that we need to think about as well is while me and Andy, so let's pretend that our inboxes, there's no limit on there. Okay. Well, some people might have a limit of 5 to 10 megabytes, but also you have to be prepared for things out of your control. And what do I mean by that? Your CV and portfolio could be viewed on a mobile phone with rubbish connection. Almost swear there, Andy, but I didn't because this is RIBA. But it could be or it could be printed by someone in an office on a very bad black and white printer. So you need to make sure that this document communicates who you are, what you're about, easily and efficiently. You want it not to be too long, because that's also a little bit boring as well. So I've got a confession here to the 101 people here. I have a really short attention span, terrible attention span. Okay. But if you can reach out to me and you make it work, then that you've done a good job. Because think about it. Okay. The point of this was, how do you get noticed? And guess what? There's so much noise out there. There's lots of competition. So you need to reach out and grab people's attention. But when you have their attention, you don't want to talk too long, and you want to make it easy as possible for people to read. So that can be the graphic design. That can also be the way you're communicating things. But think about it like CV and portfolio. You know, when you're engrossed in a book and you're excited to turn the page, we need to kind of get that feeling going on. And what we don't want is for the person who is looking at your CV to get distracted. So when I'm looking at CVs, I'm constantly thinking about, is this person going to be right for the job? And when I'm excited, I'm just like, right, I get a great CV through and it looks perfect and the experience is there, then I'm engrossed. But what is very distracting is files which don't load, graphic design which is confusing, or things that are too long, and things that show wrong sizes, because what that does is that distracts me. and spelling mistakes distract me. And you do not want people to get distracted by that. You want to keep the energy on what we talked about before. We want to keep the energy on them thinking about how excited they will be to invite you in for an interview, because they're excited by the fact that you can potentially solve the problem for them. So you want to keep the focus on them. Think of it like TikTok. And this is the last note before I open it up to you, Andy, is that if you think of it like TikTok, or let me do even more. So you've got TikTok, people swiping all the time, yeah? Or Tinder. I don't know if anyone's been on a dating app in the modern age and what have you, right? But what happens, you get profiles. People go, nah, 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 maybe. And you have to think of it like you've got a little moment to reach out and grab people's attention, and you build upon that. So life is a pitch. You got to go out on a strong note. And how can we do that? We will talk about a few of the tips that I've seen of people who grab and hold people's attention.
Well, we have some examples to go through and some live ones. Ooh. I don't know if you have any you want to show. I just want to add what do you have any to show? Or are you going to just react?
No, I'm going to be freestyle. I'm going to give the real deal, real reaction.
Yeah, I know it's a bit more sensitive in the UK as well with privacy, but here is okay. I don't want to add what you're saying. I think another thing people don't appreciate, and I've seen this firsthand. So say Hopkins is an office, 100 people in London when I was there. Several times, a pile of CVs is put together by the admin team that's come in. And I mean like a wad this thick of CVs. And when the partner directors look at it, they can't look at that. They want someone to take out 5% of them to look at that. So normally a kind of junior architect or someone, so I've done this when I was younger, goes through it and tries to pick out the interesting ones. So you've got a pile. You really are going to, someone spent hours or days on their CV. You might look at it for 5 seconds. You might look at it for 15, 20 seconds if it's interesting. And sometimes it's just 2 or 3 things jump out. Like, oh, they worked on an interesting project. Maybe they won a big prize. They went to well-known university, or some other kind of random interest that, they work for an interesting institution or had some interesting role. It just makes you stop and look. You see a bit more, but you're going through it so quickly. If it's full of text, it's like it doesn't go in. And even if you have a long career in CV, even then it's like, what are the main things I've done? What the most famous projects or jobs I've had. So say someone applying after 20 years experience is a similar thing. You still got to catch the attention and not overdo it. But yeah, I think people don't realize how quickly CVs get looked at. And as you say, it might just be looked at on a phone or a laptop in the middle of other stuff for a few seconds, 30 seconds. So that it does have to be curated and very concise and clear. And mistakes stand out as well, very much.
Yeah, I think what I was building upon your point there, which I think is right, is that you have to constantly keep the message clear. Remember, we need to solve this problem that the employer has, right? Or the brief that's been handed down by to the person reviewing the CV. Find us a BIM manager, okay? They'll be constantly thinking about the who, what, where, when, and why. And so when we're pitching ourselves, when we're trying to fill that void, we always need to answer the who, what, where, when, why. Who? Stephen Drew. What am I? I'm a Part 2 architectural assistant. Where am I? I'm in Dubai. I'm in London. When am I looking? I'm looking right now. I'm available immediately. And why? Why have I applied? I love Hopkins' work. I think it's a fantastic practice. And I know Revit. And I'm ready to go. Plug me in. So I freestyled that, but you kind of get the gist. It's about who, what, where, when, and why. And when it's confusing, what happens in that scenario that you give, Andy, about people reviewing? Is this guy a BIM manager? Is this guy a Part 2? I don't know. Let's cross it off. And we don't want that to happen. Anyways, over to you, Andy.
Okay. Just, I think before we go into looking at some examples, I don't spend too long on this, but I want to just cover the avenues to find work.
Yeah.
And I listed here the ones, I see as the main ones. The professional network, to me, it is very important. And when you're at university, the students here, it's not just about your work. You're building your network for the future. So, knowing the people in the year above is very, very useful when you apply for jobs later, and knowing who's hiring, who isn't. And your tutors and everybody there, and anybody that comes in for a lecture, that's kind of started building a professional network. And there's something to be aware of. If you go to, and there's lots of events in the city you're in, especially if you're in Dubai or UAE, you chat to people, stay around at the end, ask questions. And if that's not your nature, you might need it can help to find a way to do it. But then, there's other ways. There's online communities. Maybe you get involved in one institution that helps you, but your professional network can have this big value in hearing like who's, like you said, who's hiring about advertising, or who's about to win a big job, and so we'll be hiring soon. And then the other agencies, I think you maybe say a little bit about that. There's some active agencies in the Middle East. Cold contacting, which happens a lot, just sending off your email, hoping. And then I think you mentioned already adverts, design, etc. So if you want, is there anything you want to add here about how to find a job?
I think what you've listed is really good building blocks here. So professional network, I think that there's two aspects to that, and you kind of touched upon it, what you said, and I'm going to build upon it, is so that you have the in real life professional network and the online. So the person that wields both wins. So for example, me and you, we did a podcast a few months ago. Okay, that came up because we saw each other online. We saw each other on LinkedIn. You reached out, we had a great conversation, and on the back of it, something came out of it. So you're right, you need to kind of be on LinkedIn. You need to be on these professional networks, but it also helps, like, as you mentioned, communities, friends and institution, and things in real life. Keeping constantly in the loop with people that you've worked with before can be really helpful. If you have a friend who's an architect, you speak to them and you say, I'm looking for work, and they might go, oh, join my new architecture practice. And that's really, really important. Agencies, you're right. I do think there is a role for recruitment consultants, and I've done it as well. The caveat I would say is that if you're anyone here that's a student and the start of your career, I would advise you just to get out there and apply to a lot of companies, because an agency is probably going to be more helpful to you in your career the further you go. So when you become an associate, they can advise you on more associate positions. But when you're starting out, just go for it in person. And cold contacting, you put there, is so important. Reaching out to companies is going to get you the job. It's what got me the job during the 2009 economic crash. That's how I found a job. I sent in lots and lots of CVs. Advertisements, there's a place for that. However, it's statistically probably going to be the most competitive. So I would say that these four options of finding work are correct, but it's your professional network and cold contacting. Those are the things that people least do because it's harder. And then agencies are useful further along in your career, but advertisements is what everyone sees. So if you want to, what's the word I'm trying to find? The hardest work ones, but the highest reward are going to be using your network and cold calling.
Okay. I think with the schedule, quite keen to get into review, looking at some CVs, folios. I just put here, I think we all know the standard set of tools, weapons. Well, I think you could just mention the cover letter email, because some people often ask that. Do I need a cover letter? Is the email enough? Then we'll look at some CV folios. I need to just check the door for a second.
Yeah, you check the door and I'll freestyle. So everyone, it's a good question. Do I need a cover letter? Do I need an email? So I have historically done covering letters. However, in my opinion, you don't really have to have a covering letter. It's optional. It can be useful, but it's not as essential as the CV and portfolio. And the CV really is the main piece. It's like the bread and butter. It's the skeleton. If the CV is not strong, everything falls down. So I always think start off with a good email, and then if you want, you can put a covering letter in PDF. But I'd rather that you got the who, what, where, when, and why in that email, not a huge email. No one reads huge emails. 1 or 2 paragraphs is all you need. And then if you feel like you want to do a covering letter, that is optional. That's my opinion.
Okay. I'm going to open something now, actually. In a second. What I'm going to open. So I teach professional practice at Heriot-Watt University in Dubai. And part of that, as the coursework, was to make a CV and folio. Mm-hmm. So I have some examples from third years that were doing their first attempt at CV. I gave them a good mark. what your opinion is. One that I picked because it's a bit kind of different. You mentioned standing out, and the lady in question I thought has a different approach. Another one's just kind of good in a more standard way. But let's look at these three. Then we'll look at some real ones that people have sent in. But I'm going to show you these as an example.
Sure. While you're loading it, always do a PDF portfolio. Do not do issues or online links because some employers do not look at them. So you're risking them not being seen.
Okay. Yeah, that's another question. I see quite a few just sending issue links. It can be a bit annoying.
Yeah, I just think that you're making it hard work for the person. And normally when something's hard work, they won't look at it. Okay, first impression, I like it. Cool. Okay. You tell me when we're ready to
well, okay, let's have your first impression. Just bear in mind, it was a third year doing his first stab at a CV. Not everything here is accurate or finalized.
No, first impressions are, it's easy for me to work out what's going on. The graphic design I do like straight away, so it's a positive first impression. Few things I would keep or change. I tell you what I like. So I'll tell you, my eye immediately goes up to the hello, I'm Mohammed, and that's okay. But I think there's an opportunity there to say, hello, I'm Mohammed, but in the profile, you say entrepreneur and heart designer by trade. Okay. We don't need that. That doesn't tell me anything. Is this a part 2? Is Mohammed a part 1? Is he an architectural assistant? Is he a technician? So it's really good to kind of put that in there. I'm guessing because of BA On's architecture, it's Mohammed is a part 1 who used to be an engineer. So make that clear. And this is, you always want to make it easier for me. So I'm still trying to work out, is this a part 1? Is this a part 2? And because I see associates and different things, I'm getting a little bit confused. So the who, what, where, when, and why, I think what we would benefit from is, hello, I'm Mohammed. I am a looking for it, do. Okay. So that's what I think would be useful. The second thing that pops out at me, the more I do a deep dive, is designer, confidential. That's not useful to me. Look, it's good that you're respectful, but I have no idea what you've done in June 2019. And partner at Maker Labs from February 2021, but ongoing and confidential. So Mohammed, you might be James Bond, but it would be good to know what you did there because that is not useful information to me. So if it's confidential, you don't need to say you worked on a super secret hotel for the kings and queens of the world. But what you should do is say what your role and responsibility was. So you should say, I was a part 2 architectural assistant working on a confidential residential scheme on design, detailing, technical drawing. So I go, okay, it was confidential, but this person was on Revit. So sorry, Mohammed, you've got my first reactions on what could be improved there. But what I would say is there is some good stuff in you too. The graphic design was good. Other things, sorry, Andy, I know I'm going for it, but I love that you put the languages here. That's really good. I love that you mentioned your diploma in engineering and all that, but tools. Okay, let's talk about the tools quickly. Rhino. Okay, we got to have a bit of context with that, ladies and gents. We got to have a little bit more, So how much do you know Rhino? And so some people have the whirly bars. Maybe that's in the next CV, but always try to be literal. Rhino, 2 years. Revit, 1 year. That's my opinion. And references, you've got references there, which is good. So I really like that you said people's references. And also brownie points because you put the contact details, because you'd be amazed. I've had 1 or 2 CVs where there's no email and phone. And what is the point in a CV and portfolio if you can't ring the person? So Mohammed, if you're looking at this, you haven't done a bad job, but I want you just to kind of let us in on what you did, which is confidential.
Well, I don't think he's here. So these are my students. The first few is the kind of warm up. And he's been working for me. That's why it's confidential. But that's why I got to that's why I got to show it as well. You know, it's a bit sensitive. I have to ask politely to show your CV in public.
Yeah,
but yeah, I
yeah.
thought he got a good mark for me because it does stand out, which is like the first impression. The graphics nice and a bit different. But yeah, looking deeper, you see the content could be improved. Edited. Let's move. I'm going to show you another one now.
Yeah,
which is maybe more. I'd say standard.
Okay.
You get a lot in this format. The portrait. It's got the bars for the skills. But of all the ones like this, I thought was a good job overall. And again, you're someone a third year, so it's not like they've worked for other places and things. And also at this point, by the way, they didn't. Heriot Watt didn't have Part 1 accreditation, so they couldn't be clear. Now they could say that they're Part 1 accredited. And in the Middle East, it's a bit more complex because there's different accreditations and things. But there's normally you'd say, you know, the architectural designer or architect. As a student, you'd students a bit different. They may have a more American route or other ones a UK route. But yeah, again, I want to move on to the live ones. We'll have the people here to discuss. So this is a quick feedback from you.
Quick feedback then. Initial impression. I'm not a huge fan of the logos in the background personally, but what is good here is that it was really easy for me to get all the information from it. I don't know if I'm a big fan of the brown labels, but that's a personal point. But in terms of serving purpose, I can tell that Hannah's an architectural student, and I can see the contact details, and I can see languages, and yeah, I've got software skills. But again, these bars though, we got to get everybody. And top tip for anyone out there: don't use the bars. Use how long you've used the software in industry. If you really want to put a bar in, that's fine. But then put a bar with time in it. But I like and I kind of like hobbies at the end. I always think it makes, it's really interesting to see people put hobbies down. But okay, badminton, okay, is a bit more interesting because it's competitive. But video games, look, I love video games. I'm speaking to you on a PC game, right? But everyone loves films. Everyone likes video games. Try to put hobbies which are a little bit different. So, or anything creative. So, a good example could be doing graphic design or artwork or being involved with a charity or philanthropy or whatever, something a little bit different, or anything competitive or anything, such as sports is good.
Team sports stand out, I think. Yeah. I like how she put critiquing of film, not just, and cinematography.
Correct.
If I see like art, film, the travel, it's like, you haven't really thought about it.
Enjoying time with my friends. Yeah, it doesn't stand out. But so Hannah, not a bad impression because you made it easy to read. So if this was a first attempt, I'd say, it serves its purpose. Maybe a little bit dry.
I'll do one more from me. This is more of a wild card, but I quite liked it actually. So.
Oh wow! So okay, and for me, this is oh my gosh! If I got a sound effects here, so this is like epic fail for me. This is epic fail, right? Because so I have no idea whether this person is a student or an associate on first impression. And remember, so I'm putting on my my mind frame of I'm looking for someone to hire for my architecture company. Okay. First thing I see is interest, which is martial arts. I still don't know if this person's an architectural designer assistant or anything. I got contact details, but then as well, look at this text, striving towards a sustainably innovative future. I passionately believe in sprouting out of the box with design thinking to strengthen the bonds between humanity and nature. Right. Okay. I don't know whether this is a charity. This is the WWF, or whether or not what this person is. So what I always used to think is that that's a bit waffly, right? If you're passionate about sustainability, that's cool, but this is about explaining who you are. So I am an architectural student who was recently graduated and is looking for full-time employment in Dubai. I'm passionate about sustainability and I'm available to work immediately. Okay, that's much more useful to me rather than that. And then, experience. Okay, got a bit of competitions, that's fine. And volunteering, I like volunteering, and you've got academic awards down the bottom. And again, we've got these squiggly bars. So, this is a good point. At least Aisha's labeled these, but the other thing I noticed is that it can be really cool to put like the logo of the software. But I don't have a clue what the logo on the software is apart from Revit, which is an R, and AutoCAD, which is an A. So always make sure you put the name of the software and ideally how long you've used it.
Do you think if this one was rearranged so that you saw at the top the more important things like what they are, what they're doing, and trim the text, do you think this has some potentials a bit different in approach and layout and graphics?
I think that using the analogy that you were using earlier, you remember when you were at Hopkins and you were given a bunch of CVs to go through? If you're tired and you're knackered and you want to go through it and you saw this CV, I reckon you'd get frustrated because it's difficult to work out what this person does. So to answer your question, think about it like reading and writing. I think that you can do creative stuff, but make it really easy to work out what the person is and where and when. So actually, your student, the first one, was very good at that because we could work it out. It was just the confidential. But you see, I got to that level of critiquing about the confidential because it kind of worked. You got the person's name. I got the idea of what's going on. The page read really well. I went from left to right, got contact details. I got work experience. I got accolades. I got references. It's really easy to work out. The only bit that could be optimized is the confidential bits and the profile. But in the profile, because it's like near the top left, you go, I am an architect. I am a designer at AMA Consultants. I am a qualified architect, or I am studying architecture with a background in engineering, and I'm working on exciting confidential projects at AMA Consultants, which involves technical drawing, using this and using the software. Because even if it's confidential, you can give all that. But when in the profile, if you start telling me your roles and responsibilities and your software and what professional accreditations you have of what you studied, then I start to have a picture of what you are. Whereas if we go back to Aisha's, and last thing to end on, compared to your student, I don't know what's going on. So it's a bit like style over substance, and we want the substance to be there, and then you have the style.
Okay, I want to move on to we have some live reviews, as in people sent them in. Well, we had 4 people send them in advance. So they'll be here on camera if we have direct questions.
Okay, I'll be nice. I'll be constructive, but you know.
Well, it's for them, but it's for everybody to learn from these things.
Yes.
That's why all these examples are. You don't often see others' CVs and there are different ways to approach it, and it depends a bit on your skills and the kind of job you're going for as well. Some are much more technical, some are more creative. There are different roles in a company. But I've got some here. They're kind of actually the order I received them in. I'm going to open them up now, hopefully.
Okay.
And
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I joined a bit late there.
Hi, Jenny.
We're just moving on to the live reviews, actually.
Oh, you might need to turn Jenny's face on there, Andy.
I'll make you co-host as well with some Zoom issues. There's too many settings in Zoom when you.
There is, especially when it's live. Always the case, isn't it?
So I can stick myself on now.
Hey, Jenny.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Ahmad, you should be here.
Oh, I kind of like it.
Someone asked actually in the chat about putting photos. Now, in the UK, you're not supposed to put photos, but in the Middle East, it's very common.
Yeah. Okay.
So I don't say it is. There's different opinions on it. I'm quite used to seeing it. And if you do have a picture, this is, look kind of friendly and someone you want to hire.
Yeah.
I think it's a personal choice if you include it or not, actually. But it is kind of the normal here, what Jenny would say. But
yeah, sorry. I don't know. There's something wrong with our lights in the meeting room. So you'll see me keep waving my hand. So it's on our system and it keeps going off. Sorry. Yeah, I really like the photo. I mean, I think if you choose like a lovely photo like this, where you look friendly and professional, and you're looking at the camera directly as well, it's not something with sunglasses on or, and you can actually see your face. It's a really nice thing to add.
But Ahmed's now a panelist, so he can, Stephen, Jenny, give your first impressions.
Yeah.
I'll hold off. He's here to answer any questions we have.
Well, but I think it's a good CV, and you're right. I think with photos, the reason why we say don't put them on is sometimes that people they kind of biases, so it can go either way. As in, this photo actually reads really well, seems friendly, professional, so great photo. However, I've seen other examples where, as you said earlier, Andy, I've even seen one CV with a cigarette, and hey, I've used to smoke in the past, but these are not the preconceptions that you want to do, because someone could be like, I hate smoking, and then suddenly you've ruled yourself out. So
one of the big studios here, no, the health freaks, and they said no smoking in our office. That'd be a no. So yeah.
Exactly. Well, exactly. So to me, it's not a no, whereas to some people it is. And I think that's photos can be awesome, but they also can be risky as well. So use at your peril.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jenny, if you receive this CV and you've got, we've been saying, you get a pile of CVs, you got a lot of them. So
yes.
What would be your kind of first impressions
First impression is very good, because I think always a tidy, clean CV means a tidy, clean mind. That's what I would say. It just means that you can think in a clear and concise way, because you've managed to get the information down in a clear and concise way that everybody can read, which also means that you can communicate also. So that would be my very first impression. I really liked what Stephen was saying earlier about these bars, getting rid of these bars. I don't know what the scale is, if there's a special scale that you can use to know that you are 50% capable in something rather than 100%. But I definitely agree with Stephen about putting down how many years you've been using it for, or, I think that would make a bigger difference to me. And I like the way that you can read the dates as well, because for me, I like to look down and see the lights going, sorry. I like to look down and see, how long somebody spent in an office. And I know nowadays it's more and more difficult to find a job that you can keep for a longer period of time, because things are just changing so much, and it's so hard. But when I see that there is a good period of time that somebody's been working somewhere for, I think, right, okay, this is somebody that didn't just sort of flip from job to job. But I do like to see references, which I can't see on here. It's really great to see, even if you just put the name and you can't put their phone number, you can at least put their name and say phone number available upon request or something like that. I mean, I wouldn't like my mobile phone number on, a lot of CVs, but it's nice to see that there's some names who can vouch for you. I think that's really important.
My feeling on this one, though, it's there's formatting's run over a bit here on the right, but there's quite a lot of text there. I don't know if it's either edited down or it's borderline going to 2 pages. But it feels like there's a bit too much text in the experience without the kind of hierarchy to take in maybe the key things, like whether it's running a project or what. I mean, looking at it, there's not things jumping out, but it's nice to look at something like that and just kind of something jumps out, like, was on site for a year, overseeing a project, or ran a bid model for a big mixed use, something like that. There's kind of so much of similar hierarchy and dense, it's got a bit lost, and probably too much for me to really go through. So I would think that might need a bit of curating, editing.
Yeah, I think that building upon that, Andy, I think Ahmed, you've done a decent job. The bit that I think could help is, and you see the bit at the front, it says skills. So we got communication, creativity, and teamwork. I think that is a bit of you don't need that. And where I think that you can convey skills is actually in the experience. Okay, you don't need to say that you're 10 out of 10 in teamwork, because you can say that by saying, I worked in a high pressured project with 12 people and we delivered the scheme on time doing XYZ. That is teamwork. So maybe there's an opportunity there, Ahmed, that you can weave the skills into it. And I think that actually, Andy, that I don't mind the technical architect BIM and that role and responsibilities at the top. But I think that the further you go down, maybe that there's a bit of empty space there, is because you can see that you've kind of listed the projects bullet point after each other. So maybe what I think would be useful is to talk a little. I think it's good that you talk about the responsibilities on the projects, but I sense, Ahmed, a bit of a BIM theme in this CV, because you've got Navisworks as well, and you've got ISE, DM, contracts, and part of the company's BIM team. So maybe there's something you expand upon in there.
Going back to the start, saying that, selling yourself, there are companies in Dubai that they kind of really look for a BIM experience person. All the clients these days want a BIM model at the end, and contractors too. So there is, if you're happy, if that's what you're looking for, it can be actually really sell your BIM skills and say which projects you did, BIM, and any courses, certificates you have. And it might be for some jobs you curate the CV to highlight that. But if you hear another one, we're actually looking more for kind of project architect, project manager, you might tell a bit differently and downplay the BIM and put some other things. And it depends also what you want to do with your career. If you want to kind of focus on more BIM and the technical side, because in this region that might mean working more in the later stages. Or if you want to be more of a sort of project running architect. But if you it's a company you want to work there, and they're looking for people with BIM skills, it might be you tailor the CV in this case. You don't do a wholesale change, but you do tailor it just to really showcase your BIM skills and downplay any other experience you had. We do have his portfolio. We haven't talked much about portfolios.
Okay.
I've got portfolio as well. I'm not going to dwell too long on things. So we'll go on the first impression. You've got this in a pile of CVs, and this is coming through. I think that's been with this. So these are kind of project pages he's put together.
Yeah. So just if I can jump in for 1 minute. So this is just my opinion. Everyone have different opinions. Okay. And the successful CV and portfolio is ultimately one that gets you a job. So whichever way you go about that, we're probably going to have different opinions here on portfolios. But in my opinion, with this is that let's go back to the start, if that's okay, Andy, because I want to share like my thought process with this. So when you've stopped here as the start, and this is my point, but let's go to the real start, which is like if you go up.
Oh, this one? Which one?
Yeah, but see, you did it there, right? I said go to the start, and you started on the page, which I agree is the start. And actually going for like page 1 was an image which said portfolio. We all know what the portfolio is. You don't need to label it. So go to the very, very front, Andy, page number 1. So there's good. Yeah. This page, to me, it's a bit empty. It doesn't serve the purpose. We don't need to label things. And I think that we do this when we start the documents, when we build portfolios. I think that we go, okay, I'm going to have the sheet at the front, which says portfolio. And the next one you do is like, it can be contents. And so my opinion as a recruiter is that we always used to delete these because they were kind of empty. And we used to go exactly where you moved to at the front, Andy, which was going on this page. So for me, I would always jump into the portfolio on the most recent and relevant projects, and I wouldn't do the front label sheet, and I wouldn't do a content sheet. But I'm quite keen to hear what you both think about this, Jenny and Andy.
Jenny?
Yeah, I think I have to agree with you. You sort of, but the thing is with that is that you really want to start with whatever your best project is. So because, as you're saying before, you might get tons of CVs and you're really tired and you're sort of running through them. So, sometimes I get to sort of the first 2 or 3 pages and then I move on to another one because I'm kind of, super busy. So I think whatever you do on that first page has to be something that's really sort of super and eye-catching, but also something that really sums you up. So, sometimes I'll see, there'll be like this one's got a very large project on it. And luckily here you have your responsibilities, because sometimes I get CVs, from graduates, and they're putting in huge models like this with no explanation of what they did on it. And I'm pretty sure that they didn't really do the whole thing. So it's good to see here, even though they're smaller drawings, that you can actually see sort of some of the parts that that he was working on.
I think on this one though, that when you get the technical drawings like this, I can, with a close look at it, it's showing that you've done the technical part of a building, but when they're this small, it's a bit kind of lost. I don't know if they maybe need a separate, I'd rather see them a bit bigger on a separate page, a following
Yeah.
page to kind of say, okay, so you can put together a proper technical drawing, and I assume from Revit. Because you know, some people are very good at doing concept design and random models and SketchUp, but they can't do things like this. And if you can and done it in Revit, you know, it's good to show it. This first page, it does show, okay, you've worked on a big project somewhere in the Middle East. So if your company's just won something similar, you know, okay, well, who's going to be familiar with this typology and scale and everything? So that's all good things. But again, it's sort of selling yourself. If you knew a company had a similar project and was looking for someone in this role, you know, that you then kind of target and say, well, work on something similar, I can do the technical side. But that it is often, even if you have your portfolio, you can rearrange the pages depending who you're sending it to. If you knew there were a different type, you know, master plan or a more villas type thing, you can always front load the more important bit. And I see, okay, then you have some of your own
and
work.
that's
Okay.
nice as well to have some sketches in there. Sometimes what
Yeah,
I like to find
bit.
is that if you have a project that you worked on in an office, but there were certain parts that you did, like maybe you had a sketch from your sketchbook that then you could see how it turned into reality. You know, or some technical details, and then you have, you know, a site photograph of you on site or something like that. It's very quick then, the visual, you know, goes into our heads and we really get to understand exactly what you did on that part of the project.
Maybe some of these are a bit busy, maybe. Remember, some might be looking on a phone or a screen. These things are too small. These ones might be interesting, bigger on the left here. So maybe one less project and a bit. It's no harm having big, if your images are good, have them a bit bigger and avoid being too busy. You've got to curate down a lot, I think. But Ahmed should be here as a panelist. If you have any feedback for us, otherwise we'll move on to the next one.
But it's generally good, Ahmed.
I think there's some fine tuning would help, but there's fundamentals are pretty good. Yeah. Ahmed, do you want to add anything?
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Hello.
Are you hearing me good?
We can hear you okay. A little bit quiet, I can hear you.
I think the most thing I was focusing on to be clear where I was, who I am, and how I will communicate with the one who is seeing my CV or portfolio. Am I was clear, or maybe a little bit?
No, I think it's good. I think that if you listen back or look later, so you know, tonight, maybe have a think of the comments, but generally it's pretty much there. I think it's tweaking it, and actually, I think that probably the portfolio has a little bit more work than the CV just to do. I think that I would bring down the number of pages. I would start at the jewel of the creek and maybe take on board a few of Andy's comments in terms of the drawings too small. Maybe what you could do is expand upon one or two bits, because then we can really see that you've done technical detailing, and they look like joinery drawings from here, and you know, plans, but maybe expand upon that. However, it's not in a bad place, you know. I would give this I give this a clap. It'll make you feel better. There you go. Have a clap. It's a good start.
Thank you.
I think the important thing to remember is that we say how quickly people are looking at these. The aim is to get an interview. You come for an interview, you can then show maybe more detail, more drawings. So even if you only show like your 3-4 best projects, you don't show everything. Show your best stuff, your highlights. As we said right at the start, you know, it's selling yourself. And maybe if you know they're looking for a Revit leader on a big project, you can pick the 2 or 3 projects for that, showcase that, and then downplay some other things. But yeah, people probably tend to show too much. Quality is more important than quantity, and you'll get the chance later to show a bit more if the aim is to get an interview.
Actually, this was my point, making the page as less as I can. So that's why I try to small the technical drawing, because maybe sometimes no one want to read them, or no one want to see them. No one want to focus.
Yeah, it would depend on the job you're going for, actually, and you might. And that's the difference between cold applying, or if you knew it was a job. Look, if you're looking for a Revit job, and it's in the later state, I think you would want to see those drawings. It does help to say, okay, they've put together a proper drawing. Because some junior architects haven't really, so I think it's okay to show. But again, it depends on the job you're applying for. Let's move on to another one, though. Any last comments?
Oh, good.
Okay. Thank you. I'll bring
Thank
back
you.
in. Okay. Any last
Thank you.
comments for us, Ahmed, while you're online?
I just want to, what should I do better in my portfolio to reach the point to explain what I want to be in the next stage? That's next step.
I think that we'll do a few more, Ahmed, but I think that it's about making the information a bit more concise and a bit easier to read in some points. So as Andy said, with the documents with the drawings which are a bit too small. However, it's just a case of tweaking. So I think you'll be fine. You'll be okay. And maybe listen to the next few of these and you can take a bit of tips from them as well.
Yeah, I think it is kind of editing down a bit and making a bit clearer the key points. You know, like I said, maybe lose 10-20% by a bit of curating editing. But I think that, yeah, you don't need to add anything. It's just kind of a little bit fine tuning and editing what you have.
Okay.
And make sure no typos, spelling mistakes. And this one already says, you know, neat, the graphics correctly aligned, that kind of thing stands out. Okay, well, we'll move on to Ala, and she should be here. I'll bring her into the room.
Oh, I like this CV, first impression.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, give your first impressions. I'm going to find her in the attendees and promote her.
Yeah, sure. So just jumping in, the graphic design I quite like. Again, we've got pictures. I'm not so used to seeing pictures based in the UK, but it's very professional. But what I like most important is that it's very descriptional. So we got lead green associate, but there's Ala's a senior architect, so that's really clear. And then it's been very descriptional. So architect with 5 years experience in architectural interior industries. Experience covers several international projects. Avid learner and practitioner of architectural design field. So that's a really good intro to me. Maybe just say a little bit about when you're available and what you're looking for. You can touch upon that, but maybe you touch upon that in the email that you sent before. Work experience is good. You talk about where you are and you talk about what your job title was, and then you talk about responsibilities, preparation, the proposals, BIM. So I really like that. I think it works really well. I think skills, the only thing we could benefit for is a bit of context on how long you've used Revit. And so exactly what we touched upon before, but I love that you talk about languages. I do think you should say if you've got particular certification in languages or what level or grade they're at. But other than that, I think it's good. So I think that this is a good example to me of a clean and clear CV. So if this came in my inbox, I quickly know who Ala is, and I've got a good idea of her skill set. So I think it's good.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with you. I think it's very nice, very clear. I love the smiley photograph as well. You look very friendly. I don't really have much more to add. I mean, sometimes I just wonder why people choose certain colors in their CVs, but that's just kind of that's your own personal choice. But there's nothing here in terms of too many graphics or different things here. It's sort of very nice and sort of clear and simple. The fonts that you chose are quite kind of simple as well, which I think makes a difference, because everyone has a different opinion. when you're in design, you don't know if you can go, somebody might love this and somebody might think, why have you chosen this color and this kind of font? So I think keeping it sort of very neutral is the best thing. But again, I would just really add references. It's just so nice to have a couple of names in there. Somebody that you worked with, your tutors, it could be one of your tutors, or it could be an architect that you work with. It could even be a colleague. It doesn't even have to be, or your senior. It doesn't have to be the director of the company. It would be quite nice to see that. But generally, I agree with you, it's really good.
I think I find with this one, the use of color, it helps in jumping out. Maybe this is one where there's some key information jumps out when I look at it quickly. One being the lead green associate, because it's on its own at the top, big, and a lot of white space around it. And then I think the senior architect project coordinator role jumping out. So if a company is looking specifically that role, I mean, I was thinking that's the point where you're kind of maybe saying what you can offer. Again, going back to the start, how would you give a company what they want? If a company, are you looking for, what are you pitching yourself as? For somebody, a company needs somebody to run a project, and which means, do the client liaison, manage the consultants, information in and out, talk internally, keep an eye on design, all those kind of things. Is maybe that could be more explicit in the intro. I don't know. Again, a little bit targeting depending if you're applying for a job or you use a vacancy. But I think just the way, because it's near the top in red, the senior architect project coordinator jumps out and makes me assume that's kind of your skills and roles you're looking for. I think it have a little bit more space around the text underneath them, but overall he has a good, clear CV. So we have a kind of PDF booklet here, starting with intro, white page actually at the start. So I guess you've set this up as a book. It is best to keep it simple and have it as PDF pages opening up, just landscape, bang, bang, bang. The problem with doing spreads like this, it might work if you print a nice book, good to take to the interview, but not good for online application.
Yeah.
And I see here, you've kind of reformatted your CV here. It was actually a bit clearer of more space. And again, that's kind of doubling up. I'd rather have a separate PDF of just your work. And then here we get into the portfolio. Actually, not in this case, maybe I need to go window, more landscape. Yeah, so you're seeing a spread PDF come across. But that's here, you've filled the pages with the work, so you can kind of see you've done a big proper GA drawing. Now you also, so this 48 pages is too much. This might be something you take, even an interview, you may be taking a bit too much, but this is too much to send in a job application, I think. I don't need to see every single plan of a building. It needs to be kind of edited highlights. And although it's good to show big images to kind of see them, this is more like a portfolio for an interview, not the one you send for an application. And you can tell me what your experience is, Steve and Jenny, but yeah, it's normally like edited highlights to get your attention. This is more full on what you take to an interview, but which is put together quite well for that purpose, but not so good receiving in an email or an application.
Yeah, I building upon that, Andy, I completely agree. I think in an interview, this would read quite well. But typically, as you said, that when you're sending a portfolio for an application, you want to kind of get between 10 to 15 sheets. I think after that, we're kind of we're in danger of repeating themselves. And I think that when you're applying for a job online, you have to think of the portfolio that you send for applications as a best hits. It needs to be all about it's all about grabbing people's attention. So I always use the analogy of the Beatles. Okay, we don't want every album, we don't want the discography, we want the best hits. And I think that, as you said, Andy, that portfolio would be good in an interview because you could talk about the drawings, you can go into detail, but you really need to summarize it. And the other thing that stuck out for me is exactly what happened, because it was difficult for you to open, and you were navigating the files, and someone doing that maybe on their mobile phone, and when they're busy, they're just not going to be as patient as you open it. But what I will say, Alla, when we got to the nitty gritty and what you've done, the quality of work is there. So I think that it's a case of, for the portfolio you send to applications, it's more about refining what you've got. However, what you have got there is good substance. So it's more, in my opinion, a case of editing, not a case of we do not have enough here. So it's bringing it down and making it easier for opening on a computer and printing out 10 to 15 sheets. But that's my thoughts.
What would you say is a good number of pages? Like, I would say about sort of 10 pages.
Yeah, I think 10 to 15. And also it's online, there's the file size, isn't there, Jenny? So it's always that balance, and there's an art form to it. And also the one thing I would say is that try not to raster the drawings to the point where they can't be read or they look pixelated. So there's always that balance, isn't there, of quality and of the drawings versus the file size. But I think as a general rule, as you said, Jenny, if you got 10 to 15 sheets, typically the file is never going to go above 10 to 15 megabytes. And usually most inboxes can take that. So I think 10 to 15 is a really good rule, you know. And if you think about taking out covering sheets and content sheets, then 10 to 15 pages of real good edited information is going to make an impact. And that's what I think is the goal online.
Yes. Yeah, and I really like the way Alice set out her sheet. So, you know, you've got sort of one image per page or one plan per page is really nice. So just editing that down to 10 to 15 sheets would be, you know, a really nice hit.
Okay, let's, Ala, if you want to give any comments, because you should be here on mic if you want. We'll try
Hello?
and get to two more. Hello, hi.
Hi.
Hi, Ella.
Hi, hello there. Considering the points I've noticed that I'm supposed to have like two portfolios, one for whenever I see a job advertisement online, the one with like 10 to 15 pages, to consider that they were not gonna get bored with my content. And
Yes.
when I have the interview on site, then I can use the detailed one with like the 40 number of pages.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. And considering the 10 to 15, so do I need to lessen the content there, or do I try to squeeze just the headlines or just the main points I've worked on, rather than listing the many things that I've done in the project, right?
So there's a few ways to do it. I think that you probably typically you would be showing your more recent projects. And I think that if you think about it like 10 sheets, okay, you're going to show your most recent projects, because probably that's what's going to get you employed, because you've done more. Typically, you've probably done more responsibility and stuff. So I would say you get one of the projects nearer the front. And if you think about, you've had 10 to 15 sheets for each project, and there's 4 to 5 there. If you think about 10 sheets, 15 sheets, 3 to 4 sheets on a project is going to be enough. And you could probably bring that down. However, like everything, portfolios are very bespoke based upon you, the project. So there's no right way or wrong way to do it. But you almost don't want to squeeze everything in, because then you can't read it. But I think you just got to think about what is important. And also you can say then, you know, that in an interview, you can show a project in more detail. So you want to give people a taste of it and an insight, but they don't need to have the whole drawing packages.
In this case, this master plan here, I mean, that's not really going to tell, and for the edited highlight CV, site plan's not going to tell me much like this one. But then this page on the left is that you could have it formatted, like you have a page on the left which shows the project, the scale, the style, everything. You got some basic info. Then maybe the right-hand page, you have another render like above, and then some of the real work you did, just like one section, one plan. All this kind of grid lines and things, it shows it's technical, but it gets a bit lost in some of them. So you need to kind of carefully pick your drawings, and either, if you're doing the technical work, you know, make sure you've done the technical drawings, but don't let it get lost in too much. And yeah, I don't need to see 3 sections. I need just one, really. One good plan, one good section's enough. I don't need all of them. But that's one way to do it, is for each project, take a couple of pages and have a consistent formatting, even if you look color here and same font and title, and then have a little bit text saying, well, I worked on, you've got here stages, and so I ran the BIM model, I went to client meetings, I took the minutes, 6 bullet points for your key tasks, and then 4 or 5 images, but that's enough. And then just a spread for each project.
Okay. I have one last question. When we were seeing the CV, there was a part there. Where am I supposed to mention that I'm going to be available for the job? Do I mention that on the CV, or that would be better on a cover letter?
Yeah, I mentioned it in the email, and I think in the CV, location is important, and you did put that. So you did put where you are. because things can change. I'm available in 1 week, 1 month. So probably I would think as long as you're saying that you're looking for a job in London or you're looking for a job in Dubai in your email and when, then that works well. And you could put in your CV that where you are currently based, and if your CV will also illustrate if you are currently working at a company, because I would typically look at the employment history like this one, and I can see March 18 the present. So this person's probably available on a 1 month's notice. So as long as I got that information, I can work it out. But the email should always say, bam, who you are, where you are, what you're about, Ala.
Okay. Thank you also.
Okay, let's move on because there's at least one more I want to do. And I want to answer a question that's come in. I know there's a lot of graduates and students here and saying, well, the ones we've shown so far are experienced people that have real projects under their belt. I was showing earlier ones just for my students in third year. And I didn't show, but to speed things up, they did also start showing their project work. Because even if you're a student, then you show your student work, obviously, and it's the same principles. Make 5 to 10 pages, only show your best work, don't show me 6 sections, just show one nice one. This one, I think it's not bad, but just show that students have the same principles. It's not going to be built work. And if you've done an internship, put that in as well. Show I worked on this project. On the CV itself, though, that's always one thing students ask. Well, how do I get this started? What can they put in the CV? I encourage them to do things like volunteering. There's always things you can do. You can volunteer for Expo here. There probably is some things you're members of, or your university's had workshops. But yeah, as soon as you have any internship or working experience, it helps. And any working experience can help as well, though. It's seen as relevant. Working in a shop, you're learning about sales and management and things and teamwork. So I know it can be a bit hard for students, but you do have to think about how to really show what you have learned to know. And same principles, what are your strengths that you can sell to potential employer? And it doesn't have to be you've worked in a big office. There can be indirect experience, or maybe you've got a bit of site experience or something. There's many ways to have relevant experience.
I would just like to interrupt on something. If all attendees can post their questions on the Q&A section, so we can have all of them covered.
Yeah, we'll try. The people who we're showing now, they sent in the CV earlier in the week for a kind of quick screen and sorting out before. I don't think we can take any right now to see. We've got this and one more to look at live. And
sure. I
was hoping to finish in 10 minutes. It depends on Stephen and Jenny. Stay on a bit, but we're ready. Yeah. So we'll do, I did tell these two that we'd have a look at them. So Mandra, if you're here, I'll try promote you in. So here's her CV for your feedback.
Yeah. So Jenny, do you want to go first? Because I don't want to hog line or do you want me to jump in?
Well, I mean, the first thing for me is the photograph. So sitting in a car looking somewhere else with sunglasses on.
Yeah.
It's not a professional picture, and I can't see their face. So, I'd rather not have a photograph or have something that's a bit more professional and friendly, where I can really sort of see who they are. That's like number one, first impression. Stephen?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. The first thing when this popped up, I kept thinking sunglasses. So it totally distracted all the good work that you've done, Mandra. And when you've got into it, what's your experiences to me is good. I do think that you're very clear on setting the scene. Senior architect, 13 years experience, FF&E, got the contacts. I can see that you're based in the Gardens Dubai, your phone number, email, so that all works. Key skills, okay. Rather than just saying teamwork, you've got some stuff like budget, RFPs, but really the important bit to me when you're at this point in your career is your employment history, and what you've done at Dawson Architect is going to be the most important thing. It's good that you mentioned sectors, because that's normally what I would look for, especially as a recruiter. You will skim that information. So I do think that the bits you've done on the left really help highlight stuff. especially when you've got skills, Revit. And as Jenny's mentioned, you've got the references at the end, which really is like a abode of confidence, because I agree, if you don't have to put references down, but if you do put a reference down and it's a senior associate or senior architect like this, then to me that normally suggests that you're confident that people believe in you, which is really important. So yeah, I think that what is here is quite clear and concise. I think that the big thing was the picture, and I think that illustrates the point of pictures can be great, but they also can be distracting.
Yeah, because this is a really fantastic CV. If you're looking for somebody that's senior with a lot of really good experience, it's all there. But I'm sort of looking at this picture and going, oh. And then I'm completely distracted by the fact that this is probably one of the best CVs, we've actually sort of read in terms of what great experience you have. So, yeah.
Good news is we can just delete their image, but it's the substance is there, isn't it, Jenny? On the skills, experience, and stuff. What do you think, really, Andy?
Good. I mean, I'm wondering if some like small ID firm or something. Hey, that's really cool, sunglasses. But I think it's not. It's kind of putting yourself in a different angle. It's not normal. It normally said that if you have your picture, look like someone that's engaging, friendly, and professional. And the other pictures we saw, I think, did do that. I think the thing with picture, when the picture's not there, picture draws your attention so much that it has to be right. And why sometimes people put a little graphic or abstraction of their design or a sketch to lift it, because when it's all text, it's a bit harder to make a CV jump out. So if it's a picture of something else, it does help. And yeah, I think in this case, it'd probably be safer, unless it is some, very cool, trendy, small firm, to go over just a more normal professional photo, because the rest is there. And I think the spacing, everything here is nice. Again, it is remember that one of the color helped jump out the key things, because this is monochrome. It is sometimes good if just like the key role or qualification jumps out, so that maybe the hierarchy is lost a bit when it's monochrome. That's my feelings on this one. I didn't have a close look. Second page, and here, yeah. And we have her folio as well.
Good. Yeah, the text size is good. Even if it's not coloured, you can clearly sort of see with the spacing exactly what sector you're sort of reading.
He is here in the panelist if she wants to give any feedback. No, I think this one. Yeah, I mean, the formatting here, I asked for work, and I think it was some screenshots with some confidentiality issues. But so this is the folio that got sent through. And maybe a bit busy, but it's good. It's showing the whole project on one page. And this probably don't need so many plans, a bit too busy. That could be neater, I think. The same here, all a little too busy and a bit dense, I would say. It's all, white space also does help, make some important things stand out. Some of these might be better on their own. 12 pages here. Yeah. So well, this is one where you've got quite a variety of experience. So showing them all is a bit dangerous, and it'd really depend on who you're sending it to. So like this kind of project and page is so different than the one before. So you don't get to always choose what you work on. So different from this. And I don't know which ones you like the most and things, but depending on who you're applying for, if you're applying, say, EMAR's internal design team, you'd send this, because the kind of thing they like and do. If you're applying to another firm, though, it might be another one, or someone doing lots of hospitality, maybe this. So and remember, the first impression is very important, the first thing you see. So when you have it set up in InDesign, whatever software, you can always rearrange it for the job in hand. I do think you should always tailor it slightly for the company you're applying for. It's very easy to see online what they do, and so you understand what's the things that really going to interest them. You've got quite a lot of variety of work here. The kind of companies that will like these kind of last 2 or 3 projects, the last 4 or 5 pages, is very different from the other ones. So you definitely have to curate when you send it on. And also, I think that all these pages are a bit too busy.
Yeah, I do think that to me, it serves its purpose. I think that devil's advocate, in recruitment, I would do what you were talking about, Andy, where if, for instance, my client is looking for someone who worked on hotels and saying there was a hotel project further in the portfolio, I would usually bring that to the front, because that's what's going to grab the employer's attention. I do think, though, that the one time it is good to put all the variety of work that you've done, though, is especially during a time when there's less jobs on the market, because then you're kind of saying like, hey, I can do anything, and like I've got a variety of work. So in that scenario, it is better to tick all the boxes, because you can be not put forward for a role sometimes if you do not have that sector's experience. So I do think what you're saying does make sense, Andy, but it depends on the role. So if, for instance, you are applying for a hotel architect role, then you want to put all your hospitality work at the front. However, if you're just looking for a job because unfortunately you lost your job during the pandemic or what have you, it's a good it's a good idea to put the full range. My thoughts.
Okay, feedback for us or comments, you can turn your mic on and tell us, otherwise we'll move on to the next one.
Hi Andy, hi everyone, I'm here.
Hi.
Thanks for the good words for the CV. I do realize while going through all the other CVs that the photo is really distracting. It wasn't looking at that point when I put it there.
Don't worry.
I know. Yeah, it's not professional.
Don't worry. I reckon you just put it in there. You didn't think too much of it, and bless you, you got hammered by us on the sunglasses. But don't worry. The good news is you just delete it and it's gone. You know, it's fine.
I just have a few questions, just a short few questions. You said that the portfolio is very monochrome and maybe a bit of color was okay, but it was kept monochrome because a lot of people, they take the printout on a black and white printer, and then when you do color, then you kind of lose what you're trying to highlight and not highlight them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it wasn't important. To Andy, it was, but I think the thing is with job, when you're looking for jobs, again, there's no 100% way of doing things. There's no like you must use font, area, size 12. Everyone's got differences of opinions, and I think that I wouldn't get hung up on specifics. So to me, it was not a problem, but Andy thought the color jumped out. But I think when you do this stuff, take a view on what's important to you and run with it. But really, I think the colors are not going to stop you getting a job. It's the picture, and I think that's that was in what's the word, unanimous. So, but don't everyone gets in this process, everyone gets worried about, and I get so many questions about, I've got 11 sheets, is that okay? You said 10, and I really think that you don't have to do everything. I would be interested to hear what you guys on the panel think about that.
I think the important thing, color or not, is of hierarchy, because some things do jump out. So it's how you use white space, bold text, scale of text. Good graphics all have consistency, but it's how you arrange things that really the key bits jump out and you don't have too much info there.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, you know, like Stephen's saying, we're all giving our opinions, but it's up to you to really sort of take those and distill them and decide what it is that you really want to get out of it, because we've all got a difference, you know, of opinion, and any office that you go to is going to have a sort of a difference, whether it's color or black and white. But I think it's just the overall, you know, keeping it clean, keeping it simple, keeping your text, using the same fonts and putting your dates down the side. So those things that employers really want to see, so they can quickly go through and say, yes, I see this person's worked in a company for a long time. They went from one company to another one. There wasn't a kind of a big gap in between. They can really start to sort of read into your CV very quickly. So yeah, it's just about you taking that sort of choice, really. What do you want to take from the advice?
And in terms of tailoring for the job you're going for, this is quite a kind of modern, clean design CV for most design. That's fine. But if, say, for example, you're asked to apply for government design manager in a very sort of conservative, say, Saudi Arabia, quite a senior position, I'd be tempted to kind of use a serif font and change it to make it a more formal kind of looking CV. So sometimes even you tweak the CV a bit for the job in question. This is fine from most modern design companies and things, but the same principles apply, that you do have to do little tweaks and tailoring if it's when you know that it's going to somebody, like you're targeting a company or they've asked to see it. And even if it's little things like rearranging the projects you have or rearranging the text you have, once you have your template system in place and the projects, you can rearrange slightly. So put the hospitality first, or put the most modern projects first. Put the big projects or small projects, depending who you're going for. But if you have it well set up, that can be quite easy to do if you're applying for several jobs. Okay.
Understood. Yeah. Thanks for all your feedback. I don't have any questions on the portfolio because that's actually not the recent one. And what you said is correct. The sequence of the project was not correct. It was because I had sent snapshots to Andy. So it was the latest one had gone at the bottom, and the little earlier one, which was much earlier in my career, were right on the top.
If you have a lot of experience, it's quite good to have a long portfolio of maybe that is all your projects, 30 projects. Then you edit it down for each job, and you pick the 10, 12 best ones, but you have them there, and then you pick from the menu depending on who you're sending it to. But let's move on to the last one, because we've gone a bit over time and we haven't got any questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for sending and helping everybody watch. Okay, so this is the last one I said we would show. We'll start. I think we didn't get portfolio.
Ooh.
Okay. Let's start with the CV. And she's here actually as well. So there's 3 pages here. Chartered RIBA member. It's not the layout and the graphics and design, probably not as strong as the other ones we've seen.
I tend to see this a little bit with project manager CVs. But I do think that what is good is at the top bit, it's quite clear. I do not think, though, you always need to label things. So a summary of experience, you can just jump into it, But the big, I think, offender here is actually, if we scroll to the second page, Andy, it's just this wall of text. So I mentioned earlier that I have the short attention span in the world. Then I look at this, and this is my idea of a nightmare, because it's really hard for me to get the information from it. And so, in one sense, project manager roles have to be really up, because project manager CVs are viewed very differently than architecture CVs. So I understand that we don't need to be so visual. However, it's really hard here to work out what you've done. And so like there should be a sense of time and hierarchy and projects, and that seems to be missing. So jumping into it, I can see there's a hotel and there's aviation and airports, but I think that the biggest challenge in this CV is going to be unpacking this information, because I'm sure there's a lot of good stuff in there, but it's right now it's very hard work for me to get that information. And I say the example of my short attention span, but in real life situations, maybe the viewer doesn't have a short attention span like me, but what they do have is that they don't have much time, or they're busy, or they're distracted. And I think that this page makes it very hard for that person to find what they're looking for.
Yeah, for me, I'm just jumping at numbers, 250,000, 9,300. And, I'm not really sort of reading exactly what it is that that they've done, you know, or it just feels to me like if I was, because I'm a skim reader, I would be sort of looking at that and thinking that's just short description of the overall job. It's not really 100% sort of saying exactly what it is that they're doing, although actually when I read it more closer it is, but it's sort of intermingled in there, so I can't really kind of tell. Yeah, I mean, these are all huge projects, so it would just, I think, just a very simple, short description, you know, and that's the other thing as well, you know, architects are supposed to be able to sort of draw their project in, you know, 3 lines on a napkin. It kind of needs to be the same thing when you're writing a CV. You really need to summarize in very clear keywords exactly what it is that you've done on very short, nice 1 A4 sheet is more than enough.
Yeah, and I think that, remember we were talking about the colors before. I think that the point that you resonated with, Andy, is that, you know, the kind of the hierarchy of something in bold and then something beneath it with a bit of color and then the information below it kind of broke the page up. But in here, we don't have that. We don't have that structure. We don't know when the projects were, you know, we don't know how long that, maybe it's in the writing that you worked on it for 6 months in 2018, but I'm not gonna, I'm as Jenny said, I kind of skim read the whole thing and my brain skim reads it again, and before you know it, I haven't picked up that information. So actually that clever use of you know, bold titles and subtitles below it, it's very, very important. It's like web design. You have your header and the top in bold, and then you have subheaders below it. And your eye and the brain knows how to tackle that information. But when we have a page of text like this, my brain doesn't know where to begin. And then it kind of does a bad job of understanding who you are. That's my thoughts on it. Yeah.
Okay. I've been reading the questions in chat as we've sort of wind up now, but I think you've covered the main things. That, yeah, wall of text. Again, I think whatever your background or you're applying for, hierarchy is very important. I should be able to look at this and just see, because I might be looking at it just for 10 seconds, see the big projects, what the roles were, who the client was it a hotel, was it office, mixed use, but there's no hierarchy here allowing me to parse it, to kind of skim through and pick out the main things. And if I do see things like, you know, they've worked on a big major project, they've worked for a big major architect, they have some very advanced skill, it's going to stand out and increase the chances of getting an interview. I've brought in Chukri, if there's any comments. Oh no, do I have, what's the last one?
There are some questions regarding the automated CV reviewing programs. What factors do applicants look for in doing their CVs while when they know that there would be such a software? For example, for the CV.
Yeah, do you know what? So in the 8 years I've done recruitment, I always hear about this software sucking in the info, and I've never encountered them. And I've worked with companies like Saadid, I've worked with all these big companies. And the point is, do not worry about the systems, because typically in architecture, a CV and portfolio will go to the hiring manager. And so now I think it's an afterthought about whether or not they can be passed through computer software. The point is, if the human reader doesn't see it, then that's the big problem, because the hiring manager is going to make the decision. And I do think that in architecture, it is important to get that visual flair and care, and that's why the documents are treated a bit differently. I appreciate in terms of project management, I've seen a lot of CVs similar in that layout, and it doesn't stop people getting a job. But what would stop you getting the job there is not breaking down that job, because you've been in that role since 2009. And so we need to kind of break down that journey of those 12 years, or gosh, I'm forgetting time, but I think it's 12 years. But we need to break that down. And so don't worry about the machines. You've got to teach me how to read it, and that's the most important thing in my opinion.
Yeah, I've never even heard of these things actually. So
Big blue chip companies use it, and if anybody's using it, it might be people
Wow.
like Acom, Gensler. They can probably afford it.
yeah,
I don't think anybody with 100 staff or less will be using it, but it is an emerging
No.
thing, and an AI is reviewing it. And big
Mm.
banks and blue chip companies use it. I've not heard of it much in architecture.
No.
Yasmin, I've looked through the questions. Shows Yasmin. We're not going to review any more CVs. We've overshot a bit. I don't know how long you can stay, Jenny, Stephen.
I have to go actually because I have a couple of things to get out before 6, so I have to run.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
off.
Good luck
very
in
much.
your deadline, Jenny. Nice
Thank
to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Stephen.
Come visit us for Expo. We'll show you around.
Cool.
Our esteemed
Okay.
RIBA Council member.
Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah. Okay. Lovely to see you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank
you,
everybody.
Jenny.
Thank you,
who's
bye-bye.
joined. Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you, Jenny.
Bye.
And Stephen, yeah, we've overshot a little bit already. How long?
That's
can you
fine.
Stay?
I can.
Yeah.
We can do. We got. Well, in 15 minutes, it's like 3 o'clock.
Yeah.
So why don't we try and do the Q&A until then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've had quite a lot.
Please, Stephen, for you, sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
For
Sorry,
the agencies,
Mhm.
which kind of agencies we have to target? According to when we have experience, I think dropping a CV to any employer wouldn't help. We should target any specific agencies, or how to target good jobs.
Yeah. So it's there are a few architectural recruitment agencies. So I should mention that because I've worked in London for the last 8 years, that I know more of the London area. But I think that with agencies, they're more likely to gravitate towards you the further in your career you are. And you can usually kind of pick up which agencies are working on the roles you're interested in, even by Google searches. So I wouldn't worry about particular ones. You've got names, you've got brands, but really it should be about what jobs that they're posting, which are relevant, because actually you have tools like LinkedIn, you know, the Architecture Social, which is a community that, and a job board and a directory, which I run. There's jobs on there as well. So it's more, I wouldn't worry about targeting specific agencies. I'd worry more about the companies that you want to work for and the role. So if you're searching for associate director positions in architecture on 1 or 2 recruitment agencies have those roles, you might want to reach out to them, but do not worry about finding a particular agency.
There's quite a lot of them. They post on LinkedIn that they're looking for roles and things, and they don't say the company name. They say large developer, and they do tend to help the client side actually more. I think who are doing a lot of hiring now. But you can find on LinkedIn quite a few that are regionally active. There's and well, I won't mention any names now, but I see quite a few popping up. So I'm sure you can find it through Google or LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Now, yeah. Any more questions, Yasmin? Oh, just Chukri. One other.
So,
I'll just finish with Chukri because your CV we're reviewing. I saw you gave a portfolio, but I think those just images. You probably saw from the other ones what we said about putting together portfolio pages. So we won't look at that further. I saw some nice images, but yeah, just follow what we said for other ones about curating your work into nice pages. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll move.
You have covered very well. Yes.
Okay. We'll move to the questions because we're going. Yep. Yasmin, do you want to summarize some? You can put to.
yes, there are a lot of similar questions in the Q&A section. So I'll go into the main ones. One of an attendee is asking about, do we only need to show the projects that are solving the problem of the job-seeking entity, or should we add all what we did, or do we pick? So I think they should highlight the most important projects, the one that show off most of their skills, their abilities. What do you think?
Yeah. I think that typically most recent is usually typically the one that you've done most experience or the most complicated usually. But as you said, maybe if you worked on an airport 2 years ago, and this role is for an aviation transport specialist, it would make sense to kind of break that rule of most recent project first and put the airport at the top, because that's what's going to get you a job. So I think that a tailored job with tailored requirements, you want to kind of emulate those requirements. And so, you know, if you're applying for Zaha Hadid and you're aware that there's lots of commercial projects and they're building a scheme that's coming up, you might want to target that. But if currently you're looking for a job and you're unemployed and you're applying to lots of places, then you want to go with that best fit scenario for most people, you know?
Exactly. So conceptual for conceptual designing companies, and that's how it goes.
I think
The same applies for students, like regarding their undergraduate projects.
The important thing to remember when you get a set of projects, you're probably going to remember most of the first one you see and the last one you see. So you can rearrange it. Stephen is saying, what I did when I last did my CV, I put all my kind of main projects in one format, and then wherever it was going, I put, if it was depending on the scale, the type, whatever's the most relevant would go first. And then I'd remove the ones that are irrelevant, and I'd make sure, you know, and also showing some real projects always helps. I've got quite a lot that aren't built. So a bit of a balance of real work, competitions and things, but always thinking, you know, what's the first thing they're going to see? Do they want to see big project, master plan, or sports work, whatever? And then the last thing as well, you want to end on a high note and not overdo it. We only need really 4, 5, 6 projects, even if you've worked quite a long time. They can always know more. It's giving that kind of first impression.
Yeah, well said.
So moving on to the next one, it's Sultan is asking, do you think a good CV and portfolio is more important than interview performance or equally important? So what do you think about this?
Wow, the CV
charisma is just, it pops in the interview.
Wow, yeah, well, look at it this way. The CV and portfolio gets you the interview, and you need to keep that same level of you know, you need to keep the attention on you. So what do I mean by that? Well, if you got an amazing CV and portfolio and then you meet someone and it's anticlimactic, or you know, the conversation didn't flow, or the employer didn't think that you know, the conversation went well, you're not going to get the job. Doesn't matter how good the CV and portfolio is. But life is cruel. Life can be unfair, and unfortunately, if the CV and portfolio isn't good enough, then even if you're amazing in the interview and you're the right person, then you don't get that interview because the CV and portfolio wasn't there. So it's a process, and you have to constantly deliver. You have to constantly impress. You got to be good on paper, and you've got to talk the talk in an interview. So unfortunately, there's not one a scenario of you know, you only need one or the other.
Yeah,
you
one
need
leads to the other.
both.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's basically a brief of how will you behave in meetings with the team. And so there was one question from Ariama. She's asking, or he's asking, about what about the copyrights and confidentiality of technical documents? I think this depends upon the publishing of the project. So if it was published to the public yet, or these terms should be discussed with the company, especially if they're moving to a competitor or something like that.
I mean, official advice is that you can't show certain things. However, I'm going to speak to you from the real world, okay? And in the real world, because, you know, the reality is that you do need to show some drawings, okay? But what you can do is you don't send it in the PDF that goes everywhere. If you've got drawings which are confidential, maybe in an interview you can show them. You just say, look, these are confidential. I can show you now, but I can't, you know, give them to you in person. And then, you know, you kind of protecting the company's interest. But let's be honest, right? When people are interviewing people, they're looking to see the person's skill set and ability. They're probably not making notes on what drawings were used and, you know, like, they found secret information. So, I mean, I've seen it so that sometimes people go, oh, I can't show that drawing because it's confidential. And I'm there going like, well, we have to show that you've done some drawings. Otherwise, the world is unfair and they're not going to see the stuff you've done. So you always kind of have to, I think the key word is use common sense. Do not send super secret documents willy-nilly everywhere in emails and PDFs. However, you can show stuff delicately in an interview, but use your discretion. But don't let it, don't not show anything, and don't be difficult. Because I remember once I had I met one chap and he couldn't show me any drawings. And I was like, I don't know if you've done the job or not. I don't want to know what the drawing is. I don't care. I just need to know that you can do it. And it stopped the conversation. And because we couldn't get past that, I interviewed someone else and they got the job. So that's my opinion. You know, an employer or an official company might say that you cannot show that under what circumstances. So use your discretion and show any confidential drawings in person. Don't send them electronically. And also just, you know, be sensible about it. Andy, hot topic, you're an employer. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the kind of general rule. There's a very big difference to show something in a meeting on your laptop.
Yeah.
Even if they have photographic memory, that's it, it's gone. Yeah. Sharing it in a PDF, in an email that's going around, then it is kind of in public realm. So you might be more careful what you show there. But once you're in an interview, unless it's something super, super, super secret, showing it's not that big a deal. It's like, look, this is quite confidential, but look, here it is. I did this. You know, they haven't got it. It's yours. That's fine. It's just be a bit careful what you put in an email. But even a top secret sensitive project, the worst thing probably is the employer thinks, oh, this person's a bit loose with confidentiality, but they probably, it's the same as you say, they've got to see what you're doing. And if you're showing it on your screen, it's quite safe. But if they say, oh, can you leave your PDF? Say, well, no, I can't.
That's how it goes.
I can, but I remove those pages. I'll give you, there's always things you can show, but you just can't share, basically.
Yeah. Well, it probably won't pop up. And that's the point. When you're hiring someone for your company, and you just want to know they can do it, you're not interested in collecting drawings. You have far too much going on.
Yeah. There are some in the region, some very sensitive projects where you sign very strict NDAs because they don't want out in the media and things that this site is being worked on, or a big reveal before they announce it. So it tends to be that more than kind of stealing information. But as I said, because of that, you can show it, just don't share it. It's a pretty good rule. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on to another question. Someone is asking, do we need to add a scan of our certificates as a proof, or just mention it on the CV? Of course, this comes at a later stage with Ministry
HR
of
hiring.
Labor.
Not in the CV, no.
No. Yeah, you don't need, just as long as you can show it when asked, that's fine. You know, you really don't need to send the scan of your Bachelor of Architecture from 10 years ago with a coffee stain on it. Don't worry about it. Just send it when HR.
I've seen some questions about that from students. Can we give some more advice for graduates that haven't got real projects under the belt yet?
Yeah.
And are wondering what to put on their CV and in their folio.
Yeah, so you touched upon it earlier, Andy. If you haven't worked in the industry, don't worry. We've all been there. We all got to start somewhere. So you typically want to show that you've worked in some shape or form, or you've done something extracurricular, okay? And so if you've just been there playing video games while studying architecture, don't worry, I did that, but you need to get off your bum and get out there now and do something. That's the reality of it. As Andy said, he's an employer. I'm an employer right now. Do extracurricular stuff. So a good example is, hey, get involved with RIBA, or get involved with the expo competition, or you have to do something creative and put that on the CV. And if you've worked in a department store, I worked in a supermarket, and it did help me get my job. You don't need to say everything you did there, like, flip the chickens in the deli counter. But I just said exactly that. I've worked in Waitrose. I deal with customers. I have responsibilities, bum, 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 bum. And I put that in. But then I talked about the grades I got, and I talked about, I showcased my projects. And typically, you always want to showcase your most recent project first in academia, because the project that you just finished is usually going to be a lot better, with exceptions, but usually it's going to be a lot better. And no one wants to see like the work that you did like 3 years ago. So when you start architecture, probably that project's not going to be the most interesting one. And as Andy said, we want to have like 10 sheets of your first year project in architecture at the end. It's like, no. So just focus on your most recent ones and have some nice images there. But don't worry if you've not worked in industry yet. You have to start somewhere, but you want to look proactive. That's the key word. You want to look like you're trying. You want to look engaged.
Yeah. Enter a competition with some friends over the summer. You got your summers to work. If you haven't found an internship, do a competition or volunteer in an art gallery, whatever. Yeah, do something.
Do it now. That's the key thing. Don't put it off any longer. Yeah, don't go on a Netflix binge. Yeah, get involved and do something, and then you'll have it.
When you get a graduate CV, you're kind of, it's obviously going to be a lot of drawings and rendered work, it's student work, but you're looking to see, can they use these tools well? Do they have an eye for design? Is the graphics good and well arranged? It's different from, seeing that they've worked on real projects. That's what you're looking for in the same thing when you see the projects presented, and I don't know, what's their thinking approach to design as well.
Yeah, well said.
Okay, so there are some questions related to the type of information added to the CV, like what impression does it add for adding the relationship status, for example, Instagram and Twitter handles. Some people do that.
I don't think you should put your relationship status in there personally. I don't think you should go. I think just if you want to put one, you put your LinkedIn, but really CV, your mobile phone. I don't think you should put your Instagram. I don't think you should put your TikTok. I really don't think you should put your Facebook. No one wants to see pictures of you 10 years ago getting drunk in certain clubs or doing whatever, just so distracting. Just focus on your CV, in your CV on your email and contact details.
Okay. I think that we're going to have to wind up, actually. We've gone 2 hours. Yeah.
Bit of bonus time. Amazing. So
thank you very much, Stephen. And
my pleasure. If anyone wants to contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn. I have a website called thearchitecturesocial.com. But thank you, Andy, for inviting me here.
Thank you very much for coming. This will be recorded and on the website later. Yasmin, we can stay on a little bit off camera and just answer some questions to tidy them up, but I think we better end the session here. That's 2 hours. It's plenty. I hope it's been good for everybody, and keep an eye on what comes next.
Amazing.
Yeah, thanks. I've got to go. My family's back.
I'll have to head off soon as well.
Thank you, everybody. I have over 100 here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen.
Thank you, Yasmin. Thanks, Stephen. Please come to Dubai and visit us. We'll show you all the nice buildings.
I will at some point. I'll send you my CV.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
See you later.
Bye-bye, everybody.